Welcome to our continuing series, Questions and Answers for a World in Crisis, on Sri Aurobindo, Part 7. And here is Mother's handwriting. When in your heart and thought you will make no difference between Sri Aurobindo and me, when to think of Sri Aurobindo will be to think of me, and to think of me will mean to think of Sri Aurobindo inevitably. When to see one will mean inevitably to see the other, like one and the same person. Then you will know that you begin to be open to the supramental force and consciousness. I include the following letters from the volume Sri Aurobindo on himself. There is such a wealth of guidance, humor, and love in this volume that I recommend everyone to read it. Sri Aurobindo on prayer. As for prayer, no hard and fast rule can be laid down. Some prayers are answered, all are not. An example: the eldest daughter of my Misho, K.K. Mitra, editor of Sanjivani, not by any means a romantic, occult, superphysical, or even imaginative person, was abandoned by the doctors after using every resource. All medicine stopped as useless. The father said, "There is only God now. Let us pray." He did. And from that moment, the girl began to recover. Typhoid fever and all its symptoms fled. Death also. I know any number of cases like that. Well, you may ask, why should not then all prayers be answered? But why should they? It is not a machinery. Put a prayer in the slot and get your asking. Besides, considering all the contradictory things mankind is praying for at the same moment, God would be in a rather awkward hole if he had to grant all of them. It wouldn't do. 7 October, 1936. Sri Aurobindo. It is only divine love which can bear the burden I have to bear, that all have to bear who have sacrificed everything else to the one aim of uplifting earth out of its darkness towards the divine. The Galileo-like je m'en fiche-ism, I do not care, would not carry me one step. It would certainly not be divine. It is quite another thing that enables me to walk unweeping and unlamenting towards the goal. April 1934. Sri Aurobindo. And philosophy? Let me tell you in confidence that I never was a philosopher. Although I have written philosophy, which is another story altogether. I knew precious little about philosophy before I did the yoga and came to Pondicherry. I was a poet and a politician, not a philosopher. How I managed to do it? First, because Richard proposed to me to cooperate in a philosophical review. And as my theory was that a yogi ought to be able to turn his hand to anything, I could not very well refuse. And then he had to go to the war and left me in the lurch with 64 pages a month of philosophy, all to write by my lonely self. Secondly, I had only to write down, in the terms of the intellect, all that I had observed and come to know in practicing yoga daily. And the philosophy was there, automatically. But that is not being a philosopher. The yogi from the north, Uttara Yogi, was my own name given to me because of a prediction made long ago by a famous Tamil yogi, that 30 years later, agreeing with the time of my arrival, a yogi from the north would come as a fugitive to the south and practice there an integral yoga, Purna Yoga. And this would be one sign of the approaching liberty of India. He gave 3 utterances as the mark by which this yogi could be recognized. And all these were found in the letters to my wife. Disciple. Some mornings I recite the Mother silently with an aspiration to know what it contains. But sometimes it seems to me that this is intellectual and so not part of our discipline. Should I continue with this recitation? Sri Aurobindo. Yes, if you find that it helps you. I also recite the Gita with a view to understanding it, but along the lines of essays on the Gita. Is this a good idea? Sri Aurobindo. Yes, it does not matter whether it is mental, if it helps you. These things often help the mind to get into the psychic attitude. 25 June 1933. Sri Aurobindo. I thought I had already told you that your turn towards Krishna was not an obstacle. In any case, I affirm that positively in answer to your question. If we consider the large and indeed predominant part he played in my own sadhana, it would be strange if the part he has in your sadhana should be considered objectionable. Sectarianism is a matter of dogma, ritual, etc., not of spiritual experience. The concentration on Krishna is a self-offering to the Ishtadeva. If you reach Krishna, you reach the divine. If you can give yourself to him, you can give yourself